Welcome to our regulatory update meeting for July 2026. Today, we will cover the latest regulatory update regarding medical devices and IVD in 6 countries: Singapore, Australia, South Korea, KSA, Brazil, and Mexico. So in our first country today, Singapore, we will review 2 regulatory updates. The first one related to cooperation between Singapore and Japan. And the second one is some updates from the HSA regarding the COVID-19 IVD and IVD grouping. So we'll summarize here the key regulatory updates announced in this press release from Singapore authority. The document was released on the 21st of April of this year, and following the signing of a memorandum of cooperation 1 day earlier in Tokyo between the Health Science Authority from Singapore and the Japan Ministry of Health. So this cooperation includes several important areas. The first one, both authorities will collaborate on regulatory reliance for health products. And the second one, they plan to establish a reliance for GMP inspection, which is one of the biggest practical changes. And they also agreed to exchange information on new technology and continue working together in international scientific and regulatory program. So one of the most important updates, as I said, will be the GMP inspection reliance arrangement. The two authorities intend to rely on each other regarding the GMP inspection results and certificates. So according to that announcement, this cooperation is expected to eliminate around 3 duplicate inspections every year. The authority also estimates that product may reach patients up to 6 months earlier because manufacturers will spend less time repeating those inspections. Another important point is that cooperation is not limited to inspection, as we said. The agreement allows collaboration throughout the entire product life cycle, starting from clinical trial and continuing through product review, registration, manufacture, and post-market surveillance. So to conclude, this memorandum of cooperation represents another step toward international regulatory reliance. The most significant practical update is the planned mutual reliance on GMP inspection, and the agreement also establishes a broader collaboration covering the entire product life cycle and includes medical devices within its scope. For the update regarding COVID-19 IVD and IVD grouping, we'll summarize this selected update. The presentation that was published details many other regulatory updates, but I choose the most important one in my point of view. So the briefing was held, as I said, this presentation came from a briefing that was held on the 20th of May of this year. And the authority later published this announcement on the 28th of May. So this presentation is available to the industry. And today we will cover these 2 points. Let's see. The first regulatory updates concern the risk classification of COVID-19 IVD. So as you may know, during the pandemic, these products were classified as Class D because COVID-19 was considered a highly transmissible disease with a significant public health impact. HSA now recognizes that COVID-19 has transitioned to an endemic disease. So although serious illness can still occur, especially in elderly individuals, pregnant women, immunocompromised patients, or people with underlying medical condition, the overall public health risk has decreased. compared with the pandemic period. So this change forms the basis for this updating of their classification. The key regulatory change is that HSA will reclassify those COVID-19 IVD products from Class D to Class A. And this change became already effective on the 2nd of June of this year. So according to the authority, the objective is to maintain an appropriate level of regulatory oversight while we are reflecting the current public health situation. So manufacturers should note that COVID-19 IVD will now follow the same regulatory framework applied to other Class C infectious disease IVD. And of course, it will keep meeting the safety and the performance requirements with this classification. And the second update related to the IVD cluster grouping in Singapore. So the authority explained that this grouping was originally created when Singapore first implemented medical device regulation. At that time, it helped companies to register a large number of IVD and supported the transition into the new regulatory framework. But now, the authority believes that the existing IVD cluster has become outdated. So the presentation here will explain several reasons. There are now many complex categories, making reviews more resource intensive. There is also an overlap with other grouping approaches already described in the guidance GN 12.2. And in addition, because Class A IVD are no longer require product registration. So this is one of the original reasons for maintaining this grouping no longer exists. So beginning on the 2nd of June of this year, the IVD cluster grouping that was explained or detailed in the guidance GN 12.1, the first version has been removed. However, the authority is not removing all the grouping concepts. Specific grouping that continue to provide regulatory value, such as IHC and FISH grouping, will remain under the new guidance and may even be expanded. So this is like a HSA inviting like industry participation. So manufacturer and any regulatory affair professional will have an opportunity to provide the feedback on the potential new grouping category. According to the presentation that was published, the feedback form will be published on the HSA website, and comments should be submitted before the end of this month. This gives the industry an opportunity to contribute before the updated guidance is finalized. So the guidance is not yet finalized regarding the IVD grouping. To summarize, HSA announced two important regulatory updates. The first is the reclassification of COVID-19 IVD to reflect the current endemic situation. And the second one is the restructuration of the IVD grouping framework, removing the outdated classification and replacing it by a more accurate classification. In Australia, we will review two updates. One related to UDI implementation, who will see key regulatory updates. And the second one related to the new TGA fees and charges. So here, we will summarize the latest UDI regulatory update released by the Australian TGA. We will focus on the practical regulatory changes that manufacturers and sponsors should be aware of, and we will include the mandatory compliance dates, transition measure, and the new submission process through the Australian UDI database. So the biggest regulatory update is that, as you might know, the Australian UDI requirement officially became mandatory on the 1st of July for Class 3 and Class 2B medical devices that are supplied in Australia. But lower risk devices are not yet mandatory. And according to the authority, the next implementation phases will gradually include the Class 2A, Class 1S, and IVD. So the detailed compliance schedule for these future phases is published separately. And so for company, this or for manufacturer, these lower risk devices or IVD, this is a good opportunity to begin preparing internally their system so they can be ready once it's become also mandatory for these lower risk devices. Normally, if a medical device does not meet all regulatory requirements, it cannot continue to be imported or supplied in Australia. Because UDI requirement became mandatory on the 1st of July of this year, the TGA introduced a temporary transition mechanism. So if a sponsor is not fully UDI compliant by the deadline, they can apply for a consent to supply, or as known, CTS, allowing them to continue importing and supplying the device while they complete their UDI implementation. And the important point is that this streamlined process only became available from the 1st of July. So if a company, what was published is that if a company submitted a CTS application before that date, which is not anymore applicable now, they would not benefit from the simplified review process or the reduced application fee. So now it's not anymore the situation. So they can benefit from this reduced fees. So Australia UDI database is called AUS UDID. Company access it through the TGA Business Services or TBS portal, which is the TGA secure online system used by industry for regulatory activity. So every user is assigned specific permission. A user with the drafter role can prepare the UDI, record, and save drafts. And only a user with the submitter role has permission to officially publish those records into the production of our UDID database, exactly like similar to the GoodID in USA. So the TGA strongly recommends testing submission before sending them to the live database. So the pre-production environment is essentially a testing version of the AUS UDID. It allows manufacturer or applicant to validate their UDI record, check formatting, verify mandatory file, and identify any data issues without affecting the official production database. The TGA also recommends preparing all required information beforehand and using the Australian UDI data dictionary to ensure that the submitted data follows exactly the required format and business rules. To summarize, UDI became mandatory for Class 3 and Class 2B on last 1st of July of this year, and a streamlined consent to supply process is available for sponsor unable to meet the deadline. And finally, TGA recommends validating submission in the pre-production environment before publishing them to the production. And the second update in Australia, here is to inform you that the updated fee schedule was published on the 29th of June of this year and became effective on the 1st of July. So the objective is simply to highlight the new fees that the regulatory affairs team, manufacturer should be aware of to plan their submission. So in this slide, we summarize the updated TGA fee for key regulatory application activity. As I said, that became effective on the 1st of July. It includes the fee for priority review designation, initial conformity assessment, and RTG inclusion application. And for conformity assessment, the applicable fee depends on the type of assessment requested. So for example, a full quality management system assessment, a design examination, and a type examination each have different fee schedule. Here, in this slide, we summarize the fee associated with the RTG license amendment and the annual renewal fee. This is for medical devices. This one and the previous slide. Different amendment fee apply depending on the type of medical device, of course, including general medical devices and disinfectant, etc. And the annual renewal fee is payable to maintain an inclusion of the device in the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. And this will vary according to the classification of the device. Now, here we present the fee for the level 1 and level 2 application audit. So the application audit are not automatically required for every submission. This fee only applies, of course, when the TGA determines that an audit is necessary as part of the application review process. And the audit level depends on factors such as the classification of the device, the regulatory pathway, and the documentation submitted. For IVD, we have other fees. So here, slight difference is that unlike the medical devices, IVD include additional fee for technical file review. The applicable fee depends on the device classification, and for certain application, whether laboratory testing is required. And the RTG inclusion fee is the same for all IVD classes. I mean, there is a difference only regarding the technical fee, the review, but for the other one, we have the same fee independently from the classification of the device, as you can see. So for the license amendment, it follows also the same structure as was presented for the medical device. And the annual renewal fee is, as you can see, around 948 an Australian dollar. So for all the IVD except class 4 in-house IVD. Now, overall, the updated TGA fee schedule represents a moderate increase. Comparing that with the previous one, with most medical devices and IVD regulatory fees increasing between 8 and 10%, and the annual fees around 5%. So this is like the main information that you can take away today, is that the fees increases, but it's between 8 and 10%, and for annual fees, 5%. And update the internal records. In South Korea, we will review 2 different updates. Medical Device Act and Regulation Revision for 2026, and Medical Products Approval and Review Innovation Plan for 2026. Let's start with the first one. So here, we will summarize the latest regulatory updates published by the authority of South Korea. The updates cover 2 separate regulatory changes. The first one is the amendment to the regulation on the permission, notification, and the review of medical devices. That's what became effective on April of this year. And the second one is the amendment to the Medical Device Act, which became effective the 1st of this month, of July. So previously, only class 2, 3, and 4 devices benefit from 6-month transition period after a change approval. With the revised regulation, class 1 devices are now included. This means that after a change approval is granted, manufacturer and importer may continue supplying products manufactured under the previous approval for up to 6 months, now for all the classes. And one important regulatory update is the broader acceptance of the real-world evidence. So previously, the real-world evidence could only replace the clinical trial data for a limited number of innovative devices category. Now, in this revised regulation, it allows manufacturers to use the real-world evidence when submitting application involving modification to existing devices, even if it, yeah, of course, not innovative devices. So another practical change concerns supporting documentation. So writing in languages other than English required a notarized translation before submission. Now, MFDS has removed this requirement, and instead, manufacturer can submit a standard translation together with a confirmation from the manufacturer stating that the translation accurately reflects the original document. So, for the Act, several important changes were introduced to the Medical Device Act, and manufacturers applying for QMA conformity recognition will now be subject to assessment fee. And finally, MFDS has strengthened enforcement power, allowing conformity recognition to be revoked if obtained through false or fraudulent information. The amended Act also introduces measures to improve transparency within the medical device market. So medical device distributors and related party will no longer be permitted to sell or lease product directly to affiliated medical institution where a conflict of interest may exist. In addition, the Ministry will conduct market practice survey every 3 years and publish the results. These changes are intended to strengthen fair competition and improve oversight of the distribution practices in South Korea. So to summarize, this amendment focuses on reducing unnecessary administrative burden while we are, of course, strengthening regulatory oversight. From a regulatory affair perspective, the most practical updates are the expanded transition period for class 1 devices up to 6 months after the changes, the broader acceptance of the real-world evidence, and the simplified translation requirements. The second update in Korea cover the new medical products approval and review innovation plan issued by the authority. This initiative became effective on the 1st of June of this year and aimed to shorten approval timeline also for innovative medical devices here. The overall target is to reduce the approval process to approximately 240 days. There is several improvement that we will see. But instead of changing technical requirements, the authority changes how these applications are reviewed. The plan focuses on improving communication, helping manufacturers to prepare better dossiers, and allowing reviewers to work in parallel instead of sequentially. The additional review staff is also one of the key reasons the MFDS expects to achieve faster approval. So one of the biggest practical improvements is the introduction of an official checklist. Previously, manufacturers prepared the submission largely based on their own interpretation and experience, of course, which often resulted in missing information or deficiency in the dossier. The new checklist allow applicants to verify their documentation before submission using the same review area considered by the authority. So previously, company could ask a question before submission, but consultation were generally informal and no official written follow-up was provided. Now, the new pre-NDA meeting creates a structured communication channel with the authority. And manufacturer can discuss technical issue, clarify regulatory expectation, and resolve potential problem before submitting the application. And here, this is probably the most important operational change. Instead of waiting until approximately day 65 to receive one large deficiency letter, manufacturer will begin receiving review comment much earlier because reviews are performed in parallel. So company can start preparing responses while other review section continue. So this would shorten this approval timeline considerably. Although the new pathway offers faster review, it does not apply to every device. Manufacturers should first determine whether their products qualify as an innovative medical device under the authority criteria. So this is just for innovative medical devices, we said before. They should also begin using the published checklist during the dossier preparation and consider taking advantage of the new pre-NDA meeting process. And also, they should be prepared that they will have to prepare responses to review comment much earlier than under the previous review system. Here, in Saudi Arabia, we will review also two interesting regulatory updates: the bundling criteria for medical devices and the risk communication for medical devices. So first, we'll discuss this new SFDA guidance on bundling criteria for medical devices. So this is a new guidance, version 1, as you can see. It was issued on May of this year. But in this guidance, instead of introducing like new regulatory pathway, the objective is to provide detailed criteria for when multiple medical devices may be submitted together under one MDMA application. Also, it replaced Annex 15 of the previous MDS Rec 1 requirement. So the guidance clearly defines when products qualify as a medical device family. All devices or products must have the same manufacturer, intended use, risk classification, and essentially the same design. And two important administrative limits were also introduced. An application may contain a maximum of 5 technical files and no more than 50 individual devices. So manufacturers should also note that standalone devices cannot be grouped together with kits or sets. And rather than applying one rule to every product, the authority created separate bundling criteria depending on the product type. A medical device system are intended for products that work together as one system. Procedure packs have additional documentation requirements, including technical file for both the pack and its component, plus letters of agreement from the component manufacturer. And manufacturers planning kits registration should review this requirement carefully before the submission. So the guidance introduced detailed criteria specifically for IVD. In addition to sharing the same manufacturer and risk class, products must also use the same testing principle and belong to one predefined diagnostic category. Examples include blood grouping, genetic tests, infectious disease, etc. You can see in this list. The second update in Saudi Arabia covered the new guidance on risk communication for medical devices. So unlike previous guidance documents that focused on registration, this document explained how medical device risk should be communicated. In this, throughout the whole life cycle of the product. It applied not only to manufacturer and authorized representative, but also to importer, distributor, healthcare facility, and even patient. So the guidance establishes several principles that manufacturers should incorporate into their quality and post-market system. Risk communication is expected now to be transparent, consistent, and well documented. One practical expectation is that communication should be understandable for different audiences and, where appropriate, available in both Arabic and English. And manufacturers should also update their communication whenever new safety information becomes available. The guidance also confirms that communication activity extend beyond adverse event reporting and include awareness campaign, survey, and safety communication. So you should prepare or be prepared to provide technical documentation such as the PMS, PSUR, CAR, risk management file through this GHAD platform. This guidance clearly explains how the authority distributes safety information. So safety information or safety communication may relate to FSCA, recalls, warning, or other safety concerns. Healthcare facilities are expected to monitor this communication, assign a contact officer, and report adverse events through the designated SFDA channel. And manufacturer should also ensure timely follow-up whenever an FSCA affects products supplied in Saudi Arabia. So to summarize, this guidance is intended to improve how safety information is communicated, rather than introducing new regulatory requirements. The practical impact is that manufacturers should ensure that post-market communication processes, documentation, and reporting activity are aligned with the expectations that were described in this guidance by the authority. An organization that's already maintained robust post-market surveillance system should mainly review their communication procedure and templates to ensure consistency with this new guidance. Moving to Brazil, we will review updates related to transition to the new import model or DUIMP. So here, Anvisa, the Brazilian authority, published the transition to the new import model. Since the April of this year, DUIMP has become mandatory for various import operations requiring Anvisa approval. So the new system replaces both the import license and import declaration. and consolidating and import information into a single electronic declaration within the Brazil Single Foreign Trade Portal. So although Anvisa provided several months for voluntary adoption, many importers only started using DUIMP once it became mandatory. So the most common issue involved incomplete or inaccurate information that was entered into the product catalog and the DUIMP. And according to the authority, missing information prevents proper risk-based processing and often results in manual review and increased approval timeline. So to support industry during the transition, Anvisa has already implemented several improvements. One important change was making the purpose of importation Anvisa attribute mandatory from the 25th of May. The agency has also continued publishing guidance, updating manual, and increasing transparency by making this DUIMP analysis queue visible through a public dashboard. So the authority recognizes that this transition represents a significant operational change for the industry. And for that, to reduce the delays, the agency is introducing a dedicated team to review the DUIMP that were routed to the yellow inspection channel due to the missing or incorrect information. So dedicated people for this missing information. The agency is also continuously refining its risk management rules and providing additional training to importers. To summarize, this update is primarily operational rather than regulatory. The biggest impact for manufacturer and importer is the need to ensure complete and accurate DUIMP submissions. Organizations should review their import procedures, train personnel responsible for this DUIMP preparation, and ensure that product catalog information is fully aligned with the authority or Anvisa requirements. Our last country today is Mexico, and here we will review updates related to registration guidance published in 2026. This guidance is, or the official title of this guidance is, translated of course, Guidance of Requirements for Medical Device Marketing Authorization Application through Equivalence Agreement and the Abbreviated Regulatory Pathway. So this was published by COFEPRIS in June of this year, and is the first comprehensive guidance that explain how registration dossier should be prepared under these two regulatory pathway, the equivalence agreement and the abbreviated regulatory pathway. The documents provide clearer expectation for the applicant and help to standardize dossier preparation before the submission. So, according to the guidance, its main objective is to provide practical tools that explain the registration process in details. It expands and clarifies the administrative, legal, and technical requirements for medical device registration submitted to the equivalence agreement. The guidance also reminds applicants that all submitted documentation must comply with the applicable Mexican regulatory framework, including the General Health Law, the Regulation of Health Supplies, the Medical Device Supplement of the Mexican Pharmacopoeia, and any other applicable legal provision. The guidance is organized according to the different registration pathways that are recognized by COFEPRIS, and it provides dedicated section for submission based on the FDA Health Canada, and Japan equivalence agreement, as well as the new abbreviated regulatory pathway that was introduced in last year in 2025. And finally, for each pathway, the document explains the required administrative, legal, and technical documentation. In some cases, it also includes additional requirements for specific device category and concludes with practical notes that can help applicants to avoid deficiency during the review process. Thank you. If you have any question, we have some couple of minutes. Yes, Eden?
Hi, man. Thank you for this presentation. I have two questions for Australia. One, which application fees have been reduced under the new UDI CTS process, and how are they calculated? And secondly, also for UDI, can companies move the UDI records directly from the pre-production environment to the production environment?
Okay, so for the first part of the question, as I said, now the CTS application no, like we are on the end of July, that they were warning about the non-application of the reduction of the fees for CTS application that were presented or submitted before the 1st of July, but now all of them will be eligible for reduced fees. The reduction is that the first RTG entry included in the CTS application is around, for example, 80, and for each additional RTG entry, it will be around 10. So this is like a reduction for the other submission of the CTS. Now for the second part of your question. Yes, there is two, unlike the system in Goodit, for example, and FDA, and here there are two separate environments. A pre-production environment, which is just for testing. You cannot make it as a draft and then submit it after that, after reviewing. It's just for just for testing. And after that, you have to, when you are sure that this works and everything is okay, you repeat that on the production environment and you publish it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a little bit just for, I imagine just for the beginning of the system, so people cannot make any mistake.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think we have another question.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Vaishnavi. So my question is related to the Saudi Arabia. You mentioned that we have to communicate, we have to submit the PMS documents, risk management file documents regarding the risk related. So is it like mandatory? Is it like annual submission? We have to do it, or is it when we have an adverse event? In that scenario, do we need to submit those documents?
Yeah, no, I think that this is becoming mandatory, and this is where yes, the communication risk is becoming mandatory for Saudi Arabia.
Like how we do for the MDR, is it the same way we have to do it for the Saudi too?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it will be the same in the requirement, but something similar, similar, but it is mandatory. Yes, thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
So thank you for your attendance, and hope to see all of you in our next RegTalk in August. Some of you will be maybe on vacation, but the regulatory updates keep going. It does not stop, so we have to keep going. Thank you, all of you, and bye.
Bye. Thank you.